This wasn't supposed to come out. Not now, maybe not ever. Because the moment the security chief's words leaked, everything Erika tried to bury came clawing back to the surface like a bad Netflix documentary nobody finished editing. For months, people asked the same question and got the same answer. Silence. Reports missing, details unavailable. Explanations that somehow explained absolutely nothing. And every time someone pushed harder, the story got foggier. Like someone was deliberately smearing fingerprints off the truth. Then suddenly, one voice cracked the wall. Not a blogger, not a fan, the security chief. And when he finally spoke, it didn't sound like gossip. It sounded like someone who knew exactly why certain pages never saw daylight. This wasn't damage control, this was damage exposure. The kind that makes PR teams sweat and lawyers refresh their inboxes. The internet froze, then it erupted. Because if Erika really had nothing to hide, why was a report treated like classified government intel? Why did timelines change? Why did explanations keep shifting like a bad alibi? People started saying this makes celebrity scandals look tame. Others joked, even reality TV wouldn't dare write something this messy. But beneath the sarcasm was one terrifying thought. If this report stayed hidden for a reason, what exactly was in it? And that's where things get uncomfortable. Welcome to Viral. TREK, because this secret was never meant to stay secret. The controversy didn't start with a leak. It started with absence. A report that everyone knew existed but nobody could see. Questions kept piling up while answers kept evaporating. And every time Erika's name came up, the explanation sounded rehearsed. Like a script that forgot its own plot. People noticed the pattern before they understood it. Dates shifted. Statements softened. Language changed just enough to avoid clarity. What should have been a straightforward explanation turned into a maze of half answers and strategic silence. That's when suspicion stopped being optional. Erika's public posture stayed calm, almost too calm. Smiles steady. Tone controlled, as if confidence alone could overwrite curiosity. But confidence without transparency doesn't reassure anyone. It irritates them. Especially when the missing piece is a report that allegedly answers everything. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Insiders hinted that the document wasn't lost, delayed, or incomplete. It was intentionally sidelined. Not destroyed, not denied, just hidden in plain sight. That distinction mattered, because it suggested choice, not chaos. Enter the security chief. Not a commentator, not a clout chaser. Someone whose job is documentation, protocol, and receipts. When that kind of voice steps forward, it shifts the energy. Suddenly, this isn't gossip, it's procedure gone sideways. His comments didn't come with theatrics. No dramatic buildup, just calm acknowledgement that the report existed, was finished, and was handled differently than expected. That single sentence did more damage than 1,000 rumors ever could. The internet reacted instantly. People replayed old clips, reread statements, and matched timelines like amateur detectives with too much caffeine. What once felt confusing now felt intentional. Confusion doesn't repeat this consistently by accident. Fans who defended Erika at every turn paused. Not flipped, just paused. Because loyalty thrives on belief, and belief needs clarity. When clarity disappears, even the strongest support starts asking questions quietly. Critics, meanwhile, smelled blood. They framed the silence as confirmation, and the delay as guilt. That rush to judgment added heat, but not light. Still, the momentum was undeniable. The story had legs now. What made this moment heavier was the security chief's restraint. He didn't accuse, he didn't speculate. He simply explained process and deviation. And sometimes the calmest delivery carries the loudest implication. Suddenly, the report wasn't just missing, it was avoided. That distinction haunted every explanation that came before it. People stopped asking what happened and started asking why it wasn't shared. Erika's past statements resurfaced with new context. Phrases that once sounded reassuring now felt evasive. Timing that once felt normal now looked convenient. Context has a way of weaponizing memory. The idea that the report could shift narratives terrified some and energized others. Because reports don't argue, they document. And documentation doesn't care about reputation. Industry watchers noticed the change in tone. Media coverage grew cautious. Questions got sharper. When journalists slow down and narrow in, it's because something finally smells real. The biggest tension came from uncertainty. Nobody knew exactly what the report said, only that someone powerful didn't want it centered. That unknown became the story itself. Speculation ran wild, but the core issue stayed simple. Transparency was promised. Transparency never arrived. And now someone with authority suggested that wasn't accidental. By the end of this phase, the conversation had shifted completely. This wasn't about rumors anymore. It was about omission. And omissions have consequences. Once people realized the report wasn't missing but managed, the trust meter dipped fast. Trust rarely collapses in one moment. It erodes when silence feels strategic. The security chief didn't reveal everything. He didn't need to. He revealed enough to crack the wall. And once cracks appear, pressure does the rest. This wasn't the explosion yet. This was the warning tremor before it. Once the security chief's words hit the public, the silence shattered into noise. Not clarity, Not answers, noise. Blogs sprinted to fill gaps. Reaction channels smelled blood. And timelines turned into full-time courtrooms with 0 judges and unlimited opinions. Everyone suddenly had a theory, and every theory sounded confident. Memes arrived first, because that's how the internet copes with discomfort. People joked that this report was being guarded like a national secret. Others said even spy movies release files faster than this situation did. Laughs were loud, but the jokes carried an edge. Humor only works when something feels off. Celebrity commentary followed, but never directly. Subtweets about transparency, accountability, and telling the whole story flooded feeds. Nobody named Erika, but everybody knew who the smoke was for. When public figures start speaking in riddles, it's usually because lawyers are nearby. Fans split into camps almost overnight. One side argued the security chief was exposing procedural truth. The other insisted this was being twisted into something it wasn't. What disappeared instantly was the middle ground. Neutrality doesn't trend. Outrage does. Old interviews resurfaced and got replayed with new suspicion. Statements once taken at face value now felt overly polished. Pauses were word choices dissected. When people start breaking down sentences instead of facts, trust is already cracking. Pop culture comparisons went wild. Some said this felt like a deleted scene that changes the entire movie. Others compared it to a reality show reunion where the host suddenly asks the one question everyone was told not to mention. Those analogies stuck because they captured the tension perfectly. The security chief's calm tone became its own headline. People expected drama and got professionalism instead. That restraint made his words harder to dismiss. Emotional accusations can be brushed off. Procedural explanations linger. Media outlets adjusted fast. Headlines became careful, almost surgical. Words like allegedly and according to sources multiplied. When coverage slows and sharpens at the same time, it's a signal that editors smell something real. The report itself became mythological. People speculated endlessly about its contents without seeing a single page. Some claimed it would clear everything. Others insisted it would complicate it further. The irony was brutal. A document nobody read had more power than any statement made publicly. Erika's silence during this phase didn't help. Every hour without clarification felt heavier than the last. Silence can be strategic, but it can also read as avoidance. The longer it stretched, the louder the assumptions became. Supporters tried to redirect the narrative, calling the reaction exaggerated and unfair. Critics accused them of willful blindness. The debate stopped being about facts and became about belief. And belief is stubborn once challenged. Influencers began producing long breakdowns with dramatic thumbnails and ominous music. Context got flattened. Speculation got dressed up as insight. Views climbed. Accuracy lagged. That imbalance poured gasoline on confusion. What really escalated things was the question nobody could answer cleanly. If the report changes nothing, why not release it? That single question echoed everywhere and refused to die. Every attempted explanation circled around it without landing. Theories grew darker as time passed. Not necessarily more accurate, just more confident. In the absence of information, imagination runs unchecked. And imagination is ruthless when it senses secrecy. And industry insiders started whispering that this patient situation had moved beyond public relations. That conversations were happening off camera, behind doors that don't open for fans or blogs. When stories leave the timeline and enter private rooms, consequences follow quietly. Erika's previous image began to strain under the weight of doubt. Not collapse, but bend. Public perception rarely flips instantly. It shifts in increments. And this moment nudged it hard in a new direction. The security chief didn't reappear to clarify or expand. That absence kept his initial words intact and undiluted. No backtracking, no softening. Just a statement sitting in the public space, unanswered. Just a statement sitting in the public space, unanswered. The outrage matured into expectation. People stopped reacting and started waiting. Waiting for confirmation, denial, or distraction. Waiting to see if this would be addressed directly or buried deeper. At this stage, the story wasn't fueled by anger anymore. It was fueled by curiosity. And curiosity lasts longer than outrage ever does. The more people tried to move on, the more the unanswered questions followed. The report became a symbol, not just a document. A symbol of control over narrative, over timing, over truth. By the end of this phase, one thing was clear. The situation had outgrown spin. Whatever came next would either restore confidence or fracture it further. There was no soft landing left. The internet had moved past shock and into scrutiny. And scrutiny doesn't go away on its own. This wasn't the climax yet. This was the tightening of the circle before it. The aftermath didn't explode the way scandals usually do. It settled in, slow and heavy, like a fog that refuses to lift. Once the noise died down, what remained was something far more dangerous than outrage, doubt, and doubt sticks longer than any headline ever will. Erika's public image didn't shatter overnight, but it shifted. The confidence that once read as control now felt calculated. The calm that once reassured people began to look rehearsed. When perception changes, it rarely announces itself. It just quietly rewrites how everything else is interpreted. The missing report became a reference point in every conversation, not because people knew what it said, but because they knew it existed and wasn't shared. That absence carried more weight than any statement released afterward. Silence stopped being neutral and started feeling intentional. Industry reactions grew colder, not louder. Invitations paused. Support softened. Opportunities didn't disappear publicly. They stalled privately. That's how consequences usually arrive, when things get uncomfortable but not yet explosive. The security chief's role took on a life of its own. His credibility became the anchor for skeptics and the nightmare for defenders. He didn't need to repeat himself. His initial explanations stood untouched, and that consistency made it harder to dismiss as misunderstanding. Media framing evolved again. Coverage stopped asking what happened and started asking what wasn't shown. That's a subtle but brutal turn. When journalists focus on omission, it signals loss of trust in official narratives. Erika's relationships came under scrutiny next. Every alliance looked strategic. Every defense felt rehearsed. Even neutral voices were evaluated for motive. In scandals like this, proximity becomes guilt adjacent, whether it's fair or not. Supporters found themselves in a difficult position. Defending without information feels like faith, not loyalty. Some stayed vocal. Others stepped back quietly. The quiet exits mattered more than the loud ones, because they showed hesitation had reached even the most loyal corners. Critics didn't celebrate. They waited. Waiting is what happens when people believe time will do the damage for them, and time, in this case, was already working. The biggest consequence wasn't reputational, it was narrative control. Erika no longer dictated the pace of the story. The missing report did. Every update, every appearance, every silence was measured against one question that never went away. Why hide it? That question followed everything. It didn't accuse, it didn't shout, it just lingered. And lingering questions erode credibility faster than direct attacks. Private conversations reportedly intensified. Legal caution replaced PR confidence. When the tone shifts from public reassurance to private risk management, it signals the stakes are real. The situation also reframed past controversies. Moments once dismissed as misunderstandings were reevaluated. Patterns people ignored started to look connected. Hindsight became sharper, and grace became harder to extend. What made this especially volatile was the lack of resolution. No leak, no release. No definitive denial. Just a document sitting in the shadows, controlling the narrative, without ever speaking. The internet didn't move on. It adjusted. This story became a background filter through which future actions were judged. That's the long-term damage nobody plans for. Erika's next move now carries disproportionate weight. Transparency could shift the tide. More silence could harden suspicion. There's no neutral option left. Once trust fractures this way, the security chief's silence after speaking only strengthened his position. No contradictions, no walkbacks. Just a statement standing alone, unanswered. In controversies, unanswered statements become landmarks. This moment didn't end anything. It redefined everything. It marked the point where the story stopped being about what happened and became about what was withheld. And stories about withheld truth don't fade ice. They resurface. They evolve. They wait for the smallest trigger to explode again. Whether the report ever comes out or not, the impact is already locked in. Perception has shifted. Control has loosened. The narrative no longer belongs to one voice. This wasn't the finale. It was the point of no return, because once people believe something is being hidden, the damage isn't in the reveal. It's in the wait. And that wait has only just begun. Now don't click away acting like this was just another messy rumor. You already know this wasn't noise. This was a pressure crack. A report that exists, a reason it stayed hidden, and a silence that's getting louder by the hour. That's not coincidence. That's a storyline begging to explode. So let's hear it in the comments. Do you think Erika hid the report to control the narrative? Or is this situation being twisted beyond recognition? Is the security chief exposing truth? Or did he just light a fuse nobody can put out now? Pick a side, because sitting on the fence won't save you when the next update drops. Smash that like button, like it owes you transparency. Subscribe like you already know. Another receipt is sitting in someone's drafts. And hit notifications, because the quiet moments are when the biggest leaks usually slip through. This channel doesn't chase gossip. We follow the trail. When documents vanish, stories shift, and insiders start talking carefully instead of loudly. Viral Trek is already 3 steps ahead. Remember, scandals don't end when people stop talking. They end when the truth shows up, and sometimes the truth takes its time. Until then, the tension stays alive, the questions stay unanswered, and the spotlight never really moves. Stay locked in. Stay skeptical, because on Viral Trek, what's hidden always finds a way to surface.